Tonight we sneak through velvet shadows and marble halls to follow a very different kind of Mughal courtier, one who walks on four paws and answers to no emperor. The palace is hushed, wrapped in the scent of sandalwood, and there you are, nestled beneath a lattice window, blinking away the last light of day. A soft breeze tugs at the crimson drapes. Birds coo lazily in the high fig trees of the courtyard. Below, a slow procession of servants carries away the final silver dishes from the emperor's dinner. You stretch long and luxuriously, each claw unsheathing with a faint tick-tick against the cool stone. The great dome of the palace bathes in gold and amber as the sun finally surrenders. It's your time now. Everyone else may sleep, but your shift is just beginning. You rise like royalty reincarnated. Muscles ripple under your sleek fur. You are no ordinary cat, after all. You are the palace mouser of the Mughal Empire, assigned no official title, but widely respected by every mouse, cook, and noble in Agra fort. From emperors to errant sparrows, your work is known. If the emperor is the sun of the palace, then you are its moon. Of course, no one claps when you begin your rounds. But you wouldn't want that anyway. Cats don't perform for applause. You prefer admiration from afar, the way stars are seen but never touched. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love knowing where you all drift off to sleep. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your paws press silently into the worn grooves of sandstone tile. Somewhere above, a pigeon coos its last argument of the day. Below, the royal elephant snorts in its sleep. You weave past a discarded hookah pipe, the scent of rose tobacco still clinging to the stem. A single fig rolls underfoot, you bat it absently. Yes, your kingdom is enormous, and tonight it smells of cardamom, ink, and mild mischief. You pass through the Chatter Bazaar arcade, empty now except for fluttering silks in their stalls and a flickering oil lamp that probably should have been snuffed. Someone will get a sharp word in the morning. Not your problem. A mango pit catches your eye, it's been licked suspiciously clean. You sniff. Monkey. Probably the young one again. He has no respect for palace boundaries. You'll chase him later, if he dares return. For now, you pause at the carved archway leading to the courtyard. The palace cat has no written job description, but yours includes nocturnal surveillance, pest control, unattended food protection, and dramatic mood setting. You perform each with flair. You spot an ant parade forming along a crack near the base of a column. Not your department, thankfully. You glance upward. Arches and balconies inlaid with marble and pietra dura twist like a dream above you. This place is a maze of luxury and paranoia. Historians still argue whether the Mughals intentionally designed the palaces to confuse assassins, or if they just had a flair for the dramatic. You trot onward, tail held high like a victory flag. It's cooler here in the shade, and your ears twitch at the distant sound of a tabla being lazily played, perhaps by a bored guard. You know the sounds of this place like other cats know birdsong. Suddenly, a breeze carries the smell of roasted meat from the kitchens. Your stomach rumbles, but you stay focused. It's not time to break the fast just yet. Besides, palace scraps come later, and they're usually worth the wait. One time you scored a chunk of saffron rice wrapped in banana leaf. Divine. You round the corner into the southern colonnade. The guards are changing shifts, heavy boots echoing against stone. You hide behind a potted hibiscus and watch. They don't see you, but one of them tosses a date pit on the ground. You make a note. Later, when no one's looking. Up above, A Jiroka window swings slightly open. Someone forgot to latch it. Again. The breeze plays with a silk curtain that trails down like a ghost sigh. You leap up the narrow bricks lining the wall, 4, 5, 6 hops and you're at the sill. Inside, no one. Just books, a brass astrolabe, and half a candied almond resting on a scroll. You eat it. The scroll complains softly under your paw. You step on it again, because why not? Back down. The world is darker now. The palace changes after sunset. What once buzzed with diplomatic chatter and sandalwood perfume becomes soft, eerie, still. You're alert. The first rat of the night might be nosing out from behind the tapestry near the old throne room. You like to surprise them there. There's something comforting about this rhythm. Wake. Patrol. Observe. Nap. Repeat. You've done it 1,000 nights, and each one offers something new. A dropped earring, a whispered argument, a falling star glimpsed from the roof. Historians don't write much about you. One dusty record mentions a princely mouser of exceptional loyalty gifted a gold collar during Emperor Jahangir's reign, but no one can agree whether that was a real cat or just a metaphor for an overly inquisitive courtier. Still, your legacy is alive in scratched wooden door frames and fur left on expensive cushions. You pause to wash your paw, flicking your ear in the moonlight. Something stirs in the shadows ahead. Your first real mystery of the night. Or just the wind. You move closer, each step deliberate. Your pupils widen, taking in the silver-lit edge of the courtyard. Time to see what this shift will bring. The moment your paw crosses into the corridor, the air changes. It's quieter here, still and thick, like a hush held too long. This is your first real patrol route of the night. The south wing, home to a patchwork of kitchens, servant quarters, and forgotten storage alcoves that never stay quiet for long. Your claws click faintly on the smooth flagstone. The walls are cool, thick with centuries of trapped stories. Each arch you pass is a perfect horseshoe curve, carved with stylized vines and faded Quranic calligraphy. You know them all. You've brushed against these corners since you were a kitten, too small to leap between the roof beams. Now, you leap over storage pots like a professional athlete in fur pajamas. Something scurries ahead, fast, low, familiar. A rat. Too bold for this early in the shift. You accelerate silently, ears flattened, tail stiff like a spear. But when you round the bend, it's gone. Just a loose kernel of rice and a faint musky scent where it paused. Bold and clever. This one will be trouble. You stop for a moment beside a forgotten water vessel. The air here smells of old turmeric, ghee, and singed wood. The corridor runs past the royal kitchen doors, just recently sealed for the night. The fires have burned down, but the scent of roasted lamb still lingers like a memory. You hop onto a bench and press your nose to the wooden lattice shutter. Inside, shadows dance along the walls. You can almost hear the scrape of spoons and low muttering of tired cooks. During the day, this place is a frenzy of sound, knives tapping, orders being barked, hot oil hissing in cast iron pots the size of royal bathtubs. But at night, it belongs to you. Even the mice know to tread carefully. At least, most do. You drop back down and continue your walk. A patch of worn tapestry flutters slightly against the breeze from a wall vent. You nose under it and emerge into a narrower hallway, less decorative, more functional. These back passages were made for the invisible labor of the palace. You've heard stories whispered by servants about how these corridors connect the zenana, the treasury, and sometimes, they claim, even the emperor's sleeping quarters. Historians still argue whether these tunnel systems were real, or just exaggerated tales meant to explain how people showed up where they shouldn't. You certainly know some of them exist. You've darted through a few in your time, usually chasing a cockroach. Or being chased, once, memorably, by the eunuch in charge of the rosewater dispensary. You knocked over one too many bottles that night. A cool breeze drifts in through a grating above. It smells like wet earth and mint, likely the herb garden just beyond the wall. Somewhere in that garden, the tortoises are probably asleep under the moonflowers. You envy them a little. You pause at an alcove where a stack of copper trays leans precariously. One of them shifts with a ting, not because of you. You freeze. Then a quick scratch, 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 tiny claws on stone. The rat again. It's mocking you. You crouch low and slink forward, body curved like a bow. But when you leap around the corner, nothing. Just the echo of your landing and a grain or two of millet. You narrow your eyes. It's officially a grudge now. You continue, tail flicking. By the time you reach the servant dormitories, the corridor has widened again. A single lamp remains lit above a carved niche. You pass beneath it and catch your own shadow on the wall, long, slender, poised. You make a mental note to strut a little more next time someone paints a mural. A basket sits near the dormitory door, filled with fabric scraps and wool. You climb in, circle once, then twice. The scent of human hands is strong here, soap, sweat, coriander. You sit. For a brief moment, you're tempted to nap. A good mouser knows pacing. But no. Not yet. Your job isn't done. You leap out and duck through a hole in the bottom of the wooden door nearby. It's more of a dent really, made when someone dropped a stone grinder about 40 years ago. That grinder. Still cracked. You passed it earlier. Inside, the servants' quarters are quiet. Low beds, mostly empty. One or two occupied by snoozing figures wrapped in thin cotton sheets. You tiptoe across the room, tail lifted so it doesn't brush the floor. Near the corner, a plate with half a chapati rests on a trunk. You sniff it. Stale. Disrespectful. A child stirs in her sleep and mumbles something about mangoes. You pause. Watch. Her fingers twitch like she's picking something. Then stillness again. You retreat. Back in the hallway, you hear a distant clang, metal on stone. Probably just the old door latch near the stables. You'll circle there later. First, the upper corridor. That's where the real trouble tends to brew. You ascend a narrow stone stairwell, tail sweeping lightly across the edge of each step. At the top, the air is thinner, cooler. You emerge onto a long balcony overlooking the main audience hall. By day, this space is crowded with men in embroidered robes, whispering into each other's ears and nodding gravely at each new decree. At night, it's empty, except for echoes and maybe one or two brave bats. You walk the length of the balcony slowly. Your paws are nearly silent on the polished floor. At the far end, you hop onto a small ledge and peer down. The hall below stretches like a storybook illustration. Carved columns, fading tapestries, the echo of imperial grandeur. You like it better like this, quiet, no pomp. Suddenly, movement. You turn just in time to see a small brown blur dart under a low table. It's the rat again. This time you grin, metaphorically. The chase is back on. You dart forward without hesitation, paws gliding across polished stone like a whisper. That rat, bold, chunky, clearly well fed on palace grain, is not going to make a fool of you twice in one night. It vanishes beneath a teak bench, its tail flicking like a rude wave goodbye. You squeeze in after it, your whiskers brushing velvet dust. Too tight. You back out, sneeze once, and circle around instead. The corridor curves here, veering into a quieter stretch near the record-keeper's chamber. Not many feet tread this path after sundown. Too many stories. Too many old scrolls sealed behind carved sandalwood doors. The rat's trail leads you straight into this shadowy stretch, where the smell shifts, less food, more dust and dried ink. You pause, ears rotating like twin satellite dishes. The faintest scritch comes from beneath a cabinet. You crouch low. But just as you get ready to pounce, something odd catches your eye, a thin strip of cloth dangling from a shelf, unnaturally out of place. It flutters slightly though the air is still. You sniff. Clove oil. And something older, paper, cedar, time. You leap onto the shelf for a better look. Here lie scrolls that no longer have political value. Memos from forgotten governors. Treaties with kingdoms that don't exist anymore. A list of mango cultivars sent to the court from Bengal. The palace archivist once chased you out of here for curling up on a genealogy chart. You're not sorry. This room smells of quiet ambition. Of failed plans and old gossip, pressed into parchment like dried flowers. You pad gently across the top shelf, where loose bundles are tied in silk. One packet shifts beneath your paw and unravels just a little. A wax seal breaks with a tired sigh. Inside, a letter, written in elaborate Persian script. Now, you can't read it obviously, but you can recognize emotion in ink. The lines are heavy, sharp. Someone angry, or desperate. You bat it off the shelf. It lands with a plop near the cabinet. From beneath the same cabinet, the rat re-emerges, startled. Both of you freeze. A half-second passes. Then everything erupts. You leap. It skitters. A blur of motion sends you both crashing into a rolled-up carpet and a stack of empty scroll tubes. The rat escapes again. You're stuck halfway inside a document case shaped like a giant bamboo flute. You wriggle out indignantly. Somewhere nearby, a loose inkwell has fallen over. A dark stain blooms across the marble floor. Oops. Above, a bell chimes softly from the minaret tower. Midnight. You've already earned your keep. You exit the chamber via a broken Jali screen in the corner, squeezing between carved stone lattice patterns worn smooth by the years. Outside, the air feels lighter. You're now in the narrow back passage behind the Emperor's library. This wing is less patrolled and more mysterious. Stories claim a Persian astrologer once lived here, and that he had a pet mongoose who could recite verses from memory. Historians still argue whether this was a real creature or just an overachieving minister with unfortunate facial hair. You trot down the corridor, passing low tables stacked with forgotten books. One is open, and a single jasmine petal has fallen across its page. You flick it off with your paw and continue. Farther ahead, you hear whispering. Soft, rapid, conspiratorial. You freeze. Ears forward. The voices aren't loud enough to follow, but the tone is unmistakable. Secrets. You creep forward and peek through a cracked wooden panel. Inside, a servant and a palace guard sit facing each other, heads close. The lamp between them casts long shadows. The guard gestures toward a scroll, clearly agitated. You settle into a crouch, nose just inches from the crack. The scent of sweat and sandalwood rises from the room. You won't remember the words, obviously, but you remember the tension. The guard keeps glancing toward the door, and the servant keeps shaking his head. There's something about a shipment. A list that was altered. The words imperial orders are repeated a little too often for comfort. Then the servant says something that makes the guard go very, very still. Silence. You blink once. Then sneeze. Inside the room, they jump. The lamp tips. A yelp, a curse, and the light snuffs out. In the confusion, you dart away into the shadows. Another mystery to file under. Someone's going to be questioned at dawn. You continue your route, now entering a lower gallery where the wall carvings depict epic battles, horsemen, elephants, armies clashing in immortal sandstone. You pause beside a scene where an elephant lifts a soldier with its tusks. You've always liked this wall. It reminds you of chasing squirrels. You jump onto the windowsill and stare out into the moonlit courtyard. Somewhere, a peacock rustles in its sleep. Below, a fruit bat flutters past, clumsy and flapping. You sniff the air, faint whiff of rosewater and maybe, come in? You stretch again, then climb down, tail curled proudly. Tonight is shaping up nicely. Scrolls tampered with. Letters unsealed. One rat narrowly escaped. And now, the palace's quietest secrets have brushed against your whiskers. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster lets out a confused half-crow. Premature. You're not done yet. You slip through an open doorway leading into the women's wing corridor. And just before you disappear around the corner, you pause, one last glance back toward the darkened library. Something in that room will shift by morning. You feel it. The air has that same taste as before a storm. But that's not your business. You're a cat. You report to no one. The Zenana corridor greets you like a long exhale, warm, perfumed, deceptively still. Here, the air holds onto rose oil, cardamom, and something softer, like worn silk warmed by the sun. You pad forward on velvet feet, every paw step absorbed by thick rugs dyed in madder red and turmeric yellow. It's quieter here, not from emptiness, but because the women of the Mughal harem know how to keep their secrets tucked tight beneath their pillowcases. You're not just tolerated in this wing, you're adored. Worshipped, even. You're the unofficial emotional support animal to a dozen bored princesses and half a dozen more scheming concubines. You've been fed saffron rice from golden plates and had your ears scratched by fingers heavy with emerald rings. You've also been dressed in baby doll turbans. No one talks about that. Tonight, the harem is mostly asleep, but a few screens glow with low lamplight. You pass a curtained doorway, and someone behind it sighs a soft, lonely exhale. Maybe the emperor has chosen someone else tonight. You pause. You consider offering her the gift of your company, but you also remember the last time someone tried to comb your tail. You move on. A faint tinkle of anklets drifts from the gallery ahead. You speed up. It's her again. You round the corner and see her, Princess Merunissa, perched on the marble railing of the inner courtyard, moonlight making her almost translucent. She's wrapped in a pale green shawl, her hair undone, a book balanced on her knee and a piece of melon in her hand. You meow softly. She turns, smiles. Well, if it isn't the guardian of the night, she whispers. You hop onto the ledge beside her and accept the melon. She strokes your back absent-mindedly as she flips a page. You pretend not to care, but your purr betrays you. This is your favorite part of the night. Merunissa is curious about everything. She reads poetry, maps the stars, and once tried to train you to sit on command. That lasted 3 days. Historians still argue whether women in the Mughal harem were as isolated as the records suggest, or whether they exerted political power in their own hidden ways. If they asked you, you'd answer with a single look at Merunissa's smirk and a paw on her list of questions to ask the emperor tomorrow. Did you catch anything tonight? She asks. You consider lying, but then flick your tail twice. She laughs. I'll tell them you scared off a band of spies again. You rest your head on her lap. Just for a moment. She starts humming, something old and almost forgotten. It drifts over the moonlit courtyard and seems to soften the stone itself. A few windows above light up, women moving to catch the cooler midnight air. Laughter bubbles faintly. You know this place like a vein knows the beat of a heart. Every whisper, every footstep, every midnight longing passed between walls like folded notes. Far below, a fountain gurgles lazily. The courtyard was once home to an exotic menagerie, parrots, deer, even a leopard cub gifted from Kabul. These days, just pigeons and ornamental fish remain. You once fell in chasing a koi. Not your best moment. Merunissa shifts. Time for dreams, she murmurs. She gathers her shawl, rises, and disappears behind a carved sandalwood door. You remain on the ledge, watching her light vanish. A breeze passes through the corridor, tugging gently at the silk banners strung between pillars. They flutter like breath held too long. You stretch and yawn, a slow, theatrical display. Then you turn toward the north exit of the zenana. There's a narrow side hallway here, one often ignored. But you know better. It leads to a small chamber used by the royal perfumer, long since moved to a new wing. This place now stores amphorae of oils, patchouli, jasmine, civet. You slip inside. The room is heavy with scent. Too much, really. You sneeze twice. Then a third time. A clay bowl rattles. From beneath a cloth-draped table, movement. You freeze. Not the rat. Something bigger. Slower. More blobby. You inch forward. And then it lumbers out. A hedgehog. One of the Queen's unofficial herb garden patrols, gone rogue again. You both lock eyes. It blinks. You blink. It turns around and waddles back under the table like this entire encounter was a mistake. Fair enough. Back in the hallway, you hear a soft chime from the guard's watch post down the length of the corridor. The changing of the shift. Soon, the hallways will shuffle with sleepy men muttering about dreams interrupted. You head toward the guard's post, careful to stay in the shadows. The post itself is a small alcove tucked beside the northeast gate. Two guards are already there, one slumped, chewing something from a paper cone, the other fiddling with a dice game scratched into the stone. You pause a few feet away, crouched behind a potted citrus tree. The dice clatter. Snake eyes again, one mutters. Bad luck, the other yawns. They don't notice you. You slip past them and leap lightly onto the low gate wall. From here, you can see out toward the palace gardens. The moon is high now, pale and steady. The jasmine glows faintly, the hedges whisper with wind, and somewhere deep in the shadows, the world beyond the walls keeps sleeping. You sit, tail curled around your feet. You breathe it in. The zenana is quiet again. The palace lies between breaths. And the night is only half done. The gardens spread before you like a green and silver quilt, stitched together by moonlight and the perfume of night-blooming flowers. Every hedge, every tree is trimmed and trained with more discipline than most minor princes. You leap down from the low wall with a soft thump no one hears. You're a shadow wrapped in fur, and this is your kingdom. To your left, the royal orchard looms, its rows of guava and mango trees nodding sleepily in the breeze. Ahead, the path winds toward the reflecting pool, where the emperor sometimes stares at his own face for hours, as if hoping for divine advice to ripple back. But you're not here to contemplate statecraft. You're here because someone has been stealing fish. You pad toward the pool, your paws sinking into the cool earth between flagstones. Crickets chirp like an improvised orchestra, never quite on beat. A frog plops lazily into the water as you arrive, harmless. You settle near the edge and watch. The fish glide beneath the surface, orange, silver, black and gold, fat and oblivious. You count 12. There should be 14. Again. You squint into the ripples. A scaled tail disappears behind a lotus leaf. Then, motion. Not fish. Not frog. Something slinks across the far bank. You crouch low. A civet. You should have guessed. It's back again, long-bodied, banded tail flicking, the little thief. It dips a paw into the water and tries to swipe a fish. The koi scatter. You let out a low, territorial hrmfff. The civet freezes. Stares. Then, as if insulted, it trots off, pausing only to poop in the basil bush. Rude. The gardens have always hosted more drama than the emperor's council meetings. You've seen lovers argue under the cypress trees. You've watched a eunuch dig up a secret pouch of coins under a fig tree only to rebury it when he couldn't remember why he stashed them in the first place. Historians still argue whether the Mughal gardens were intended primarily for spiritual reflection or political theatre. You suspect both. Depends who's doing the reflecting. Satisfied that the koi are safe, for now, you stroll toward the garden's outer edge. Here, behind a thick grove of banana plants, lies a low building few remember exists. The royal astrologer's old pavilion. No one visits it anymore. The current astrologer prefers an office with less bat activity. But this forgotten room still smells of burned sandalwood, copper ink, and incense gone cold. You slink through a broken shutter and land lightly inside. Scrolls still hang from the walls. Charts of constellations drawn in red and gold. A cracked globe with the continents drawn upside down, for some reason. A robe hangs on a peg, dusty but regal. And in the center, a shallow brass basin filled with water, reflecting the sky above. You leap onto the table beside it. Your reflection stares back at you, whiskers, ears, eyes bright with reflected starlight. You stretch a paw toward the surface. The ripples distort your face, turn you into something mythic. Once, one of the palace cooks swore you were a reincarnated poet, sent back to spy on the royal kitchens. You let him think that. It got you extra chicken scraps. You curl into a ball on the table. The air here is still, dense with old silence. It's not sleep you seek, just a pause. Your body hums with the memory of your rounds, the rat's narrow escape, the perfumed hedgehog, Merunissa's touch, the civet's fishy heist. A lizard scuttles across the far wall. You don't bother. Instead, your ears twitch. Sound. Faint. Metallic. You rise slowly, ears forward. From outside the pavilion, beyond the banana grove, comes the soft clank of armor. A pause. Then another. Someone is trying to move quietly and failing. You jump to the window ledge and peer out. A shadow moves along the garden's stone wall. A man in partial armor, unusual. Palace guards don't patrol this area at night. You drop silently to the ground and trail him. He stops at a hidden door in the garden wall. You know this one. It leads to the camel pens outside. It's supposed to be locked. The man pulls a key from his sash. You narrow your eyes. He slips through the gate and vanishes into the night. A few moments later, a different guard appears from behind a pomegranate tree, watches the gate, and then melts back into the shadows. You sit very, very still. Something isn't right. But again, you're a cat. You don't file reports. You remember. You observe. You might knock something off a table later to express your disapproval, but that's about the extent of your HR capabilities. Still, you return to the door, sniff the handle. Sweat. Leather. Come in. You make a note in the only way you can, by clawing a small mark into the dirt beside the gate. A message for yourself, or maybe for no one at all. You turn and head back toward the main garden. The moon is starting its slow descent. The wind shifts, carrying the first hint of dawned cooler, tinged with smoke from bakeries stirring to life. On the palace roof, the falconers are beginning to stir. You see a lantern flicker on. Time for training. You pass under the arched garden trellis where the grapes never grow and head toward the servants' quarters. This route takes you through the bathhouse atrium, which smells of damp marble and faint lavender. You pause briefly to sip from a shallow basin. The water is cool, but carries a hint of lime. Some poor attendant has been over-enthusiastic with the cleaning. The bathhouse is empty now, but by mid-morning, it will echo with gossip and splashes. You've seen everything here, from nobles soaking in rosewater to a panicked owl that accidentally locked itself inside for half a day. You pad through the steam-warmed tiles, your tail high, your paws leaving tiny, perfect prints that vanish almost instantly. Soon, the palace will awaken. But not yet. Not quite. There's still time for one more pass through the kitchens. The Mughal palace kitchens are their own bustling universe during daylight, that is. Cauldrons big enough to drown in, fires hotter than royal tempers, and more spices than there are stars over Agra. But at this hour, it's still and quiet, save for a few sleepy embers glowing beneath the great tandoor oven. You slip through a side vent used for smoke, your personal cat door, and land lightly on the warm clay floor. To be clear, this is not a scheduled part of your night watch. But hey, every great guardian deserves a snack. And this place is a treasure trove. The kitchens smell like everything and nothing, all at once: ghee, turmeric, stale bread, old garlic, roasted goat, cardamom sugar, and a suspicious hint of burnt lentils from someone's failed midnight snack. You make a beeline for the meat prep table, where you know, with 95% certainty, there will be something left uncovered. You are not disappointed. A tiny scrap of chicken clings desperately to a bronze skewer. You dispatch it quickly and cleanly, the way your ancestors might have handled an unsuspecting jungle partridge. The flavor is smoky, rich, maybe a little too salty. You don't care. You're a cat. As you clean your paws with exaggerated dignity, a rustling noise breaks the silence. Not a rat, this is more deliberate. You crouch, ears flicking toward the storeroom. Someone's inside. You creep toward the heavy curtain separating the kitchen from the spice chamber. The scent hits you first: fennel, clove, asafoetida. It's like being slapped in the face with 10,000 market stalls. Inside the chamber, a figure is hunched over a basket of dried chilies. Not a thief. One of the assistant cooks. Young. Nervous. His candle sputters as he hurriedly drops something into his robe. Not spice. A letter. He tucks it into a jar labeled cinnamon. Do not touch. Bold choice. Historians still argue whether the Mughal kitchen staff engaged in palace intrigue or simply gossiped while chopping onions. You're fairly certain this one's up to something less culinary. You blink slowly at him from the doorway. He spots you. Oh no, he whispers. You meow once, low, throaty. He freezes. You stare at him for exactly 6 seconds before turning around and strolling away, tail high. Message delivered. You saw nothing. For now. But tomorrow, maybe some leftover lamb wouldn't hurt your feelings. You slink into the courtyard behind the kitchens, where broken clay pots and storage jars lie forgotten among weeds. The sky has darkened to that deep blue-gray that hints at the coming dawn. A few stars still cling to the edges. The moon is lower now, resting gently against the palace walls. You hop onto an overturned basket and pause, letting the breeze carry scents to you. Smoke, milk, sweat, a whiff of musk. Somewhere nearby, a camel grunts. Your ears twitch. Footsteps. You duck behind a half-crumbled pillar. Two guards pass along the outer corridor. Not the usual pair. One carries a small leather satchel. The other wears no insignia. Strange. They stop just short of the garden gate, the same one you saw used earlier tonight. The one that's supposed to remain bolted except during royal hunts. The guard with the satchel mutters something, gestures toward the horizon. They both glance around. You flatten yourself lower. Then, with practiced ease, the second man pulls out a tiny brass tool and unlocks the gate. They slip out into the pre-dawn haze. Interesting. You blink. Once, slowly. The scent of cumin lingers faintly behind them. Your instincts buzz. But before you can investigate further, a sharp hiss from above draws your attention. Rani. Oh, joy. She's perched on a nearby parapet, her eyes glowing faintly like twin lanterns. Rani is not your friend. Rani is another palace cat, and her main job, besides stealing your favorite windowsill, is to act superior. You chirp softly in greeting. She hisses again. Honestly, so dramatic. She leaps down, lands in the dust, and saunters past you with deliberate disregard. Her tail brushes your whiskers as if to say, "This is my shift now, peasant." You resist the urge to pounce. Barely. Instead, you double back toward the eastern wing of the palace, where the servants' quarters lie. You pass by the pigeon lofts, which are quiet now but will soon be a riot of flapping, cooing messengers. The Mughal court is deeply invested in pigeon communication. Some say it's faster than camel couriers. Others just like the excuse to build fancy towers. You once tried to eat one. Never again. You reach the water carrier station just as the first porters begin to stir. One of them, bleary-eyed and scratching his beard, spots you and chuckles. Already finished your rounds, little shadow? You blink at him. He tosses you a chunk of roti. Dry, but edible. As you chew, dignifiedly, of course, the first shafts of sunlight slip over the horizon, gilding the palace domes in soft amber. The shadows grow long, then begin to retreat. The world is waking, and your shift is almost over. You pass a mirror tucked into a niche wall, used by the royal attendants to adjust their turbans. You catch your reflection, fur slightly askew, one ear smudged with ash from the kitchens, eyes still sharp. Not bad. As you head back toward the central courtyard, the main gate creaks open. A delivery cart rolls in, clay pots of milk, baskets of herbs, a sack of flour that's already split at the corner. A goat bleats from somewhere inconvenient. A new day begins. And you, palace cat, have survived another night. You scale a low wall and leap gracefully onto the sun-warmed sill of your favorite window. Yes, your window. Not Rani's. You made that very clear last week. Inside, the quiet hum of servants preparing for the emperor's morning routines. Beyond that, the emperor himself, probably still dreaming of conquest and poetry. You curl up, tail tucked over nose, and finally allow yourself to rest. But even in sleep, one ear twitches. Because the palace never truly sleeps. And neither do you. The dreams come fast and strange, as they often do when you nap beneath the golden sunbeams pouring through a Jaroka window. You twitch once, then twice, something about a mouse the size of an elephant, wearing a turban, trying to recite poetry in Persian. Typical. Then, clink. Your ear flicks. Not from the dream. From reality. You don't move yet. You lie still, body warm, but mind already sharpening like claws on sandstone. Another clink. It's metallic and deliberate. The kind of noise a sword makes when someone's not being careful. You rise slowly and peer through the window grill. Below, in the small courtyard near the harem's eastern wing, two figures in uniform stand beside a chest. Too large for laundry. Too fine for grain. One opens it. Inside, scrolls. Many of them. Seals from different regions, Gujarat, Kabul, Lahore. You recognize one. It came in yesterday via pigeon. You watched it arrive. So why is it being loaded into a chest? Historians still argue whether Mughal court politics were as sophisticated as European diplomacy or just glorified family squabbles with nicer architecture. You're leaning toward both, especially now. A third figure joins them. Not in uniform. He's dressed like a eunuch but walks with too much confidence, back straight, eyes sharp. You know him. Haji Mirza. He's not supposed to be here. He's not even supposed to be awake. He hands one of the guards a small pouch. Silver coins glint faintly. Bribery before breakfast. Charming. You jump down from your windowsill and land with practiced grace in the alleyway below. Your path to the courtyard is indirect. You dart through the laundry hall, slip under the marble fountain, still dry, and leap a barrel to land near the archway that opens to the inner court. They're gone. The chest is gone. But a single scroll remains, fallen near the steps. You pad toward it. It's broken from its seal, partially unrolled. You can't read much: tax exemptions, river passage, Hindu merchant coalition. Politics. Trade. Maybe rebellion. Definitely secrets. You pour it once, then step back. You can't carry a scroll, but you can carry knowledge. Or at least hold on to it until someone smarter notices. A meow sounds behind you. Not Rani this time. It's Chutki, the tiny grey tabby who lives among the palace linens and believes the world is flat because she once walked off the edge of a bench and never recovered. She looks at you with the wide eyes of someone who's either found a ghost or misjudged a butterfly. She chirps. You blink at her. She runs away. Honestly, you're surrounded by amateurs. You climb the eastern arch and stretch across the warming stone tiles. Dawn is now fully dressed and parading across the palace roofs in full gold regalia. The muezzin's call has finished, and the emperor's first robe change is already underway. You've got about 20 minutes before someone starts shouting about missing scrolls. So, you move. Back to the astrologer's abandoned pavilion. Back to the banana grove and the scratched mark in the dirt. This time, you look more closely. Tracks barely visible. Human. Not guards. One set smaller than the other. Both leading from the hidden gate, but only one set returns. Interesting. You leap onto the wall and peer beyond the palace. The camel pens lie just beyond, but further still, the stables, the garrison, and the open roads leading to the river port. So many directions. So many places a scroll or a man could disappear. You return inside, passing the jeweller's gallery. No guards here yet. The jewellers won't arrive until noon, fresh from gossip and breakfast. You pause in the doorway. It glitters. Low cushions. Velvet-draped benches. A scale for weighing pearls. On one of the tables, an emerald the size of your paw. You consider knocking it to the floor. You resist. Just barely. Instead, you walk past the mirrored walls, catching 20 distorted versions of yourself as you do, stretched, squashed, ghost-like. You pause. One mirror is ajar. Not a mirror. A door. You squeeze through. Behind it, stairs. Narrow, winding, leading down. To where, you're not sure. Maybe the treasury vault. Maybe the tunnels that run under the palace like veins. You've heard the stories. Secret paths built for escape. Or spying. Or smuggling. Or cats. You descend. The air grows cooler, damper. Smells of stone, iron, and rosewater. You pad carefully. The torches are unlit, but your eyes adjust. At the bottom, a chamber. Not large. Not empty. A man stands there. Alone. Reading a scroll by the light of a small oil lamp. It's the eunuch again, Haji Mirza. He doesn't hear you. He mutters to himself. You make out a few words. Shipment, Jahangir, port. Then he folds the scroll, hides it beneath his robe, and turns to leave. You vanish into the shadows. You're not supposed to be here. But then again, neither is he. You follow him until he disappears into another stairwell. Then you backtrack slowly, quietly, until you emerge back into daylight. The courtyard is no longer quiet. A servant shrieks. Where is the scroll? It was here. I saw it. Guards gather. Voices rise. You sit in the archway and yawn. Drama. Always drama. Rani appears, lounging like she owns the courtyard. She looks at the commotion, then at you. She meows smugly. You blink once. Slowly. As if to say, some of us actually work. She licks her paw. You rise and walk away. Let the humans sort it out. You've already filed your mental report. Later tonight, you'll investigate again. Maybe you'll even nap in the hidden tunnel, just to see who else passes through. The day unfolds like a slow fan dance, servants rush, nobles glide, whispers flutter through corridors like sparrows. But you move unseen. The sun climbs higher, and you vanish into the shade. The palace by afternoon is no longer yours. The corridors fill with embroidered slippers and jangling anklets. Couriers dart past with urgent messages. Musicians tune their sitars in shaded alcoves. The hush of night gives way to a chorus of mortal ambition, silk rustle, and sandalwood sweat. But you've retreated. There's a ledge above the hall of private audience, high, shadowed, impossible for even the cleverest child to reach. From here, you see everything. The marble throne where the emperor sits. The gilded carpets below. The giant peacock fan waving in slow, sleepy arcs. This is where you rest during the day, half asleep, fully aware. Today, though, you're restless. Too much happened last night. The gate. The scrolls. Haji Mirza. The disappearing footprints. It doesn't add up. But that's not your concern right now. Right now, it's time for another round of grooming. You stretch luxuriously, twisting until your paw reaches that one spot behind your ear that always itches after climbing dusty tunnels. Somewhere down below, a nobleman is reciting poetry about mangoes. Loudly. And incorrectly. You twitch an ear in disapproval. Historians still argue whether the Mughal court's obsession with poetry was a genuine love of art or just competitive bragging disguised as romantic metaphors. All you know is that this particular poem makes you want to cough up a furball. A shadow passes. You freeze. It's not a cloud. It's a hawk. A palace-trained raptor, its sharp eyes scanning the courtyard below. used for hunting and intimidation. And sometimes, unfortunately, they confuse you for lunch. You duck lower into your ledge. Your fur stands up. The hawk doesn't dive, but it circles once. Twice. Then it lands on the wrist of a falconer who appears like magic from behind a silk screen. You exhale slowly. Close call. A rat wouldn't have been so lucky. You remember your mentor, old Paku, who once lost part of his tail to a hawk named Razor. He never fully trusted the skies again. You're smarter than Paku. And faster. Once the danger passes, you leap down a nearby lattice screen and land with a quiet thump behind a scroll alcove. And there, unexpectedly, you find a new scent. Soap. Ink. Saffron oil. You know this combination. It's the royal scribe. You follow it carefully through a series of archways until you spot him. He's in a tiny courtyard off the harem's rear chamber, scribbling furiously. Alone, save for a monkey chained to the post beside him. The monkey is eating a fig and glaring at everyone like it's been personally insulted by history. You watch for a moment. The scribe mutters, crossing something out. He looks stressed. He tears up a page, then another. He begins to sweat. Then, he does something strange. He takes a fresh scroll from his satchel. He dips his pen. And he begins copying what you recognize as the secret trade scroll from last night. Verbatim. You move closer. The monkey screeches. The scribe jumps. Looks around. Sees nothing. He folds the new scroll, seals it with a different mark, one belonging to the Deccan envoy, and hides it beneath a potted plant. Then he rushes off toward the inner hall. You leap lightly onto the pot. Sniff the scroll. Definitely a fake. This isn't forgery for fun. Someone's rewriting politics. Fabricating alliances. Creating confusion. And they're using palace cats, sleepy scribes, and distracted guards to pull it off. You hop down and vanish behind a curtain as a pair of concubines enter, giggling about something to do with a stolen hairpin and the emperor's favorite poem. You could not care less. But now you have a dilemma. What do you do with this information? If you were human, you'd write a strongly worded note. If you were a monkey, you'd scream. But you are a cat. So you nap. Just briefly. In the shade of a rose lattice, with your tail curled protectively around your paws. You don't need to rush. The palace moves slowly. Always has. Always will. When you wake, the sun is lower. Golden hour. The hour when shadows stretch long and secrets try to slink home before dinner. You rise and stretch. Your nap has reorganized your thoughts. The scrolls, the bribes, the strange footprints, the fake message, someone is orchestrating something beneath the emperor's nose. You wander toward the musicians' quarters, passing by a sandstone niche where court artists paint portraits by daylight and argue by moonlight. One of them, Javad, often leaves a bowl of milk near the step. It's there again today, still cool. A reward? A bribe? Who knows? You lap it up slowly. As you drink, two noble women walk past, whispering. Sent word to the Deccan, but then a second letter came. Can't trust the eunuchs anymore. Or the scribes. His Majesty mustn't find out before the Festival of Lights. You flick your ear. It's bigger than you thought. You follow the women for a bit, but they enter the harem's inner sanctum off limits to most, and definitely not worth getting your whiskers plucked for. You double back toward the outer garden. As the breeze rustles the neem leaves above, you pause at your favorite marble bench, the one where you once buried a mouse for later, only to have Rani steal it. You jump onto the seat. You clean your face with slow, steady swipes. And you think, someone has set the court in motion like a game board. But there's a missing piece. The reason. The why. Is it a coup? A cover-up? A marriage scheme gone truly sideways? Historians still argue whether the Mughal Empire was held together by loyalty or bribery. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between, but tonight, you're going to find out for yourself. The moon begins to rise. The peacocks scream once. The wind changes. And somewhere beyond the gate, someone waits in the dark, thinking the palace slumbers. Fools. You're just getting started. Darkness returns like a whisper. You slip into it gladly. The courtyard torchlights flare one by one, golden halos in the thickening dusk. Musicians begin their evening ragas. Somewhere in the kitchens, a cook drops a ladle and curses. The emperor, your emperor, is seated for dinner. His fourth meal today, not counting the mango tasting earlier. But you're back on duty. You start with the western wall. The one near the garden where the scroll was copied. You check the base, low hedges, trickling fountains, and marble benches rubbed smooth by generations of gossip. Tonight, it's empty. You pause. There, under the bench, the scroll is gone. The fake scroll, the one the scribe left earlier today. Taken. You sniff the air. Still warm. No smell of rats. Only the faintest waft of saffron oil, and cinnamon. Cinnamon means one thing. The Deccan couriers. You slip along the shadows, heading south toward the temporary quarters of the foreign envoys. Tents and canopies stand at the edge of the complex, their guards relaxed, laughing softly. Not your usual post, but tonight the scent leads here. Historians still argue whether the Mughal court's reliance on foreign alliances was strategy or desperation. You figure it's a little of both. When you build an empire that vast, even your enemies start sending gifts. You sneak behind a linen partition. And you see it. A courier in Deccan colors, young, nervous, reading that scroll. He looks up suddenly, calls to a companion, and the two of them disappear into their tent. You know what that means. Forged intelligence is about to hit the road. You race back the way you came, through the fig grove, past the jeweler's quarters, closed now, save for one sleepy guard snoring upright, across the courtyard with the broken sundial that's been wrong since 1572. Rani blocks your path. She stretches out on the steps like a lazy empress. Move, you meow. She yawns. You leap over her and keep going. She flicks her tail in amusement. Drama is not her interest. Silk cushions and leftover pheasant, that's her realm. But you're built differently. You reach the astrologer's old platform, your secret perch above the palace hub. From here, you see everything. Guards changing shifts, pigeons released with messages, one slightly drunk noble throwing up into a flower pot. You sit and watch. Then you hear it. A soft squeak. Metal. The sound of a small gate opening. The one near the tunnel entrance. You rush there. By the time you reach the hidden stair, the passage smells of footprints. One direction. You descend. It's colder tonight. The walls weep moisture. You walk carefully, silent, invisible. Halfway through, you pause. Voices. Low, urgent. Scroll has already left, no turning back. He'll suspect nothing. The scribe did well. When the emperor reacts, the Deccan will answer. You peek through a gap in the stone. Two men. One is Haji Mirza. The other wears the uniform of a mid-level treasury clerk, but his hands too clean. His eyes too sharp. Not a clerk. They extinguish a lantern and head deeper into the tunnel. You follow at a safe distance, every step precise. You're not chasing. You're tracking. Eventually, they reach a chamber deep under the palace. It smells of wax, oil, and iron. Scrolls are stacked on low tables. Copies. Originals. You realize, slowly, you've found a forger's den. A black archive. No one else in the palace knows this exists. The clerk opens a ledger and adds a new entry. You catch a glimpse. Codes, dates, routes. This isn't a single trick. It's an operation. Someone's been manipulating imperial communication for weeks. Maybe months. You knock over a tiny ink pot. It rolls. Clinks. They turn. You vanish. Back up the tunnel. Fast. Not fleeing, repositioning. The way a cat does when the wind shifts. By the time you reach the marble corridor near the pigeon tower, your heartbeat is calm again. You perch on the balustrade. The moon is higher now. Half full. Cloud smeared. You think, why all this? Why forge messages between the emperor and the Deccan? A false alliance? Or a trap? You remember the scroll you saw earlier, tax exemptions, river passage, Hindu merchant coalition. Maybe someone wants war. Maybe someone wants trade to collapse. Or maybe, just maybe, it's a test. Of loyalty. Of truth. You sit with the thought as a breeze rolls through the neem trees. Below, a group of courtiers emerges from the banquet hall, flushed with wine, swatting at fireflies with brocade fans. One of them slips on a pebble and yelps. You do not move. Then you see her. The cook's assistant. The one who feeds you boiled fish on Fridays. She walks out of the kitchens carrying a small scroll. She hands it to a passing guard, no fanfare. No hesitation. You tense. Is she involved too? The guard reads the message, salutes, and disappears toward the emperor's chamber. You follow from above, roof to awning, ledge to cornice. Silent. Graceful. He enters the Diwan Ikos. And doesn't come back out. You inch down to the balcony. Listen. The emperor's voice, measured, cold. This contradicts the missive from 2 days ago. Someone answers, too soft to catch. The emperor again, louder. If anyone tampers with my word, I will know. And they will not live to see another mango season. You blink slowly. He knows. Maybe not everything, but something. You pull back into the shadows. It's out of your paws now. You've followed the scent trail as far as it leads. Tonight, the emperor wrestles with deceit in his silk-draped chamber. The forgers hunker beneath the palace with their ledgers and lanterns. And you curl up in the banana grove. Not to sleep, to watch. Because this isn't over yet. And someone's going to slip. The banana grove rustles faintly around you as the night matures into its thickest silence. This is your realm when most beings of 2 legs are snoring, and even the pigeons have tucked their heads beneath their wings. But you're wide awake, curled in an alert half-circle beneath the drooping leaves. Every whisker, every hair, is tuned to the vibrations of the palace around you. There's a rhythm to the Mughal night. Not all of it is peace. You stretch, rise, and pad silently across the dew-cooled tiles, glancing up just in time to spot the flicker of torchlight from the eastern colonnade. Odd. That's the route taken only by the emperor's private guards, and they don't usually move in 2s after midnight unless something's happened. You squint, ears perked, tail low. Then you see him. The treasury clerk from the tunnel. Only, now he's in the gold-trimmed garb of an imperial advisor. Historians still argue whether the emperor knew how many of his own spies were double-dipping, loyal to him on paper, loyal to gold in practice. Judging by tonight's shape-shifting clerk, you're starting to think the paper wasn't worth much. He walks fast, passing beneath the stone chatris without hesitation, heading straight for the emperor's pigeon tower. That's where messages arrive, not where they depart. You follow via the rooftops, your paws slipping silently over curved tiles. One wrong move, and you'd be down 3 lives. But you're sure-footed. One of your best qualities. From above, you peer down through the carved Jali window into the pigeon chamber. The clerk isn't alone. There's a boy with him, no more than 12, probably a servant, eyes wide with fear. The clerk unwraps a tiny scroll and ties it to a bird's leg. Then, without hesitation, he hands the boy a pinch of poppy seed paste. Not for him. For the bird. He's drugging the message bird. You blink. That's new. The idea is cruel and clever. The bird will veer off course, possibly to the wrong recipient, or nowhere at all. The emperor thinks he's sending a message to the Deccan ally. Instead, it flutters into a random bazaar or crashes into a bathhouse wall. And no one will suspect the bird. You hop down to a low beam and flex your claws. The clerk leaves. The boy follows, casting one last glance back at the fluttering, soon-to-be very drowsy pigeon. You wait until they're gone. Then you leap. One bite through the string and the scroll drops to the floor. You pour it open and read well, sense the general vibe. It's the emperor's attempt to clarify the scroll contradictions. An honest effort, actually. You tap the pigeon's cage with a paw. It blinks at you woozily. Sorry, bird. Not your night. You steal the scroll in your teeth and vanish into the shadows before a single feather settles. Outside, the stars glitter cold and bright. You trot along the rooftop with the scroll trailing behind like a royal banner, passing a set of domes where 3 guards lie sleeping, one drooling onto his chest plate. You resist the urge to swipe him awake. Barely. You make your way to the astrologer's tower, abandoned since the last guy predicted the emperor's second son would die by mango and promptly got reassigned to latrine duty. It's high, breezy, and the perfect place to leave messages you want someone to find. Like a certain advisor who might be loyal, or at least curious. You tuck the scroll between a loose brick and a carved monkey idol, then give it a last look. Let fate decide who finds it. Back to your rounds. This time, the harem walls. No one's supposed to enter after midnight. So of course, someone's trying. You hear the soft clink of a bracelet snagging on a vine. A stifled curse. Footsteps not quite soft enough for secrecy. You take position on the archway, tail curled neatly, eyes narrowed. It's the royal scribe. Again. This guy's really out of his league. He clutches another scroll, different seal. Looks older. Dustier. Maybe even authentic. He ducks behind a jasmine bush, clearly waiting for someone. And he doesn't wait long. A veiled woman approaches. Not a servant. Her steps are too trained, too poised. She doesn't speak. Just takes the scroll, nods once, and disappears into the harem. You drop down behind the scribe. He yelps. Stares at you. You stare back. He drops a piece of fish. You eat it. Fair trade. He mutters something about cats knowing too much and scurries off. You're inclined to agree. At this point, you know more than half the council. Back through the inner halls you go, this time to the Imperial Library. It's one of your favorite spots. Warm from the stone braziers, always smells like parchment and cardamom. There's a small niche in the far wall where you nap sometimes. But not tonight. Tonight, a lamp is lit. Too late for reading. You peek in. A familiar figure sits hunched over a stack of documents, muttering. The Emperor's brother. The one who always smiles too much. He reads slowly, carefully, highlighting lines with a feather dipped in wine. Who highlights with wine? You slink closer. His cross-referencing scrolls. 2 sets. One you saw earlier, the fake Deccan Agreement. The other looks older. You recognize the pattern. It's from a different court entirely. Rajput, maybe. He laughs softly to himself. Then he burns the older scroll. Oh, it's worse than you thought. This isn't about misinformation. This is about rewriting entire histories. Historians still argue whether internal betrayal or external pressure truly doomed the Mughal Empire. You're starting to think, why choose? Outside, dawn hints at the horizon. Pale violet bleeding into silver. You retreat to the Peacock Dome. It's time to think. The forged documents. The drugged birds. The rewritten records. The forged alliance. This isn't one scheme. It's 5. Overlapping. Layered. Possibly competing. Which makes them sloppier. Which makes them easier to unravel. You yawn. Your shift isn't over yet. But it's close. And you're getting very close to the catnip at the center of this tangled mess. You stretch, tail flicking. Tomorrow night, things will break open. But for now, one last patrol. One last lap around the empire. Before the birds wake. Before the fires stoke. Before the emperor opens his eyes and the palace pretends to be normal again. It's the hour before dawn. That soft, strange time when even the shadows seem drowsy and the marble underfoot holds the memory of yesterday's sun. You move through it like a wisp of thought, light, quiet, unavoidable. You begin where the air smells sharpest, near the spice cellars. The traders from the southern ports have just delivered crates of cinnamon, pepper, and cardamom so strong it practically makes your fur sneeze. You're not here for flavor, though. You're here for movement. Misdirection. And there it is. A crate, small, unsealed, marked not with an imperial sigil, but with an old merchant's brand known only to the older cats, and possibly 2 paranoid parrots who witnessed a scandal during the Jahangir years. It's been used before to smuggle a message out of court during a gem tax debate gone violently wrong. You remember that night. Too many rubies, not enough brains. You jump onto the lid and sniff. Ink. Parchment. Dried lime leaf used to preserve messages in long travel. Someone's preparing to send another message out. Quietly. Maybe today. Historians still argue whether Mughal intelligence networks were centralized or a series of loosely connected bribe-fueled improvisations. You're leaning heavily toward improvisations held together with ghee and charm. You press your weight onto the lid until it creaks open just enough for you to peer inside. More scrolls. Unmarked. Dangerous. And one object you didn't expect, a golden clasp, shaped like a serpent biting its tail. You've seen this before. It belonged to a courtier named Alam Firdaus, who supposedly drowned in the garden pool last summer while looking for a fallen mango. His body was never found. People assumed crocodile. You did too. The Mughal garden pools were, bizarrely, stocked with small, decorative crocodiles. Because obviously, you pour the clasp out. Hold it in your mouth. It tastes like betrayal and old perfume. A rustle behind you. You whirl. It's the scribe. Again. He's holding a bag of dates and what looks like a half-eaten fig tart. His eyes widen when he sees the crate open, and you, sitting like a judgmental statue with that golden clasp clamped in your mouth. "You've got to be kidding me," he mutters. You tilt your head. He steps forward, reaching for the clasp. You jump back. He sighs, then sits on the floor cross-legged. "Fine. You win." He offers you the fig tart. You take a bite. "Not bad." "Look," he whispers, "I didn't start this. I was told to transcribe what they gave me. I just didn't ask too many questions." That, you think, is exactly the problem. You drop the clasp at his feet. He stares at it. "Furdors." You blink slowly. Now he's worried. Now he realizes this thing is older, deeper, maybe colder than he thought. Not just a one-off forgery, but a net. A conspiracy. He picks it up carefully and tucks it into his sash. Then he does something unexpected. He bows to you. Like an actual, from-the-waist bow. You consider swiping him for dramatics, but you've seen worse. You part ways in the garden, him vanishing into a side corridor, you slinking through the basil beds, careful not to crush any royal herbs. The palace is stretching now, in its sleepy, groaning way. Guards yawn at their posts. Lamps get snuffed out one by one. You sneak into the ladies' quarters. Strictly forbidden, of course. Unless you're a cat. There's chatter inside. Morning gossip over rosewater and sugared almonds. "Did you hear about the advisor? Sent away suddenly. Oh, and that poor servant boy. Fainted in the pigeon tower, they say. Too much spice, I told you. Or too much listening." You catch snippets. Names. Accusations wrapped in perfume and silk. These women know more than half the council. But they speak in riddles, half-truths, and careful smiles. One of them, the emperor's cousin, kneels down to scratch your chin. "Tell me, are you the little god everyone says you are?" You purr, mostly because she's got warm hands and smells like apricot. Then, movement. A flash of emerald green cloth just outside the lattice. You freeze. That cloth is the exact shade of the secret messengers from Gujarat. A delegation supposedly long gone. You dart out into the hallway, tail flicking. He's fast, this one. Young. Lean. Moves like a street rat who learned manners from watching nobles. He carries a pouch. You smell pepper, sweat, and ink. Always ink. He darts into the tapestry hallway. You follow. Past portraits of emperors scowling into eternity. Past the embroidered panel of Akbar blessing a giraffe. Yes, a real giraffe. Historians often omit the delightful detail that it wore anklets. The boy ducks behind a statue of Ganesha. You leap onto the statue's shoulder, peer down. The pouch is gone. Left behind. Or past. You scan. On the floor, a smear of wax, a snapped ribbon. The pouch was delivered. To someone. But whom? You follow the scent. It leads not toward the council chamber, not toward the pigeon loft. No. It leads to the zoo. The Mughal Zoo. An entire wing of the palace grounds dedicated to beasts gifted from foreign lands, bred in imperial stables, or simply acquired through less than diplomatic means. Elephants. Peacocks. Leopards. And a library. Yes, a library. Attached to the zoo for some unfathomable reason. Maybe for the scholars who study animal behavior. Or maybe so the animals can borrow books. Who knows? You sneak inside. And that's where you find him. Not the emperor. Not the scribe. Not the snake-eyed advisor. But the boy. The servant from the pigeon tower. Reading. Alone. holding the scroll from the green-cloaked courier. He looks up. You again. You walk forward and sit. Not threatening. Just present. He holds the scroll up. I didn't deliver it. I read it. I always read them first. Bold move. You think I don't know what's happening, he whispers. They're all playing games. The emperor, the advisors, the Deccan, the scribes. He pauses. I just wanted to see what power felt like. You blink. I thought if I knew, I could do something good. But it's all lies. Every side. You stand, brush your tail against his hand, and walk away. The scroll's contents will spread. Whether he shares it or destroys it, you've done what you can. You've watched, listened, poured at secrets until they bled truth. And now, the sun is almost here. And something tells you, tomorrow, everything breaks. The first rays of dawn stretch like sleepy fingers across the polished dome tops, casting a golden shimmer over the palace as if nothing unusual happened last night. Which, of course, is precisely the illusion they're all hoping to maintain. But you know better. Beneath those glittering tiles and finely tuned rituals, something's splintering. You emerge from your hiding place behind the garden sundial, fur still cool from the stone. You shake it off, blink once toward the waking horizon, and begin your descent into what promises to be a very strange day. Because today, you don't rest at sunrise. Today, you stay up. You begin with a silent pass through the kitchens, always the first to wake. Great cauldrons bubbling, stacks of flatbread sizzling, and the smell of onions sharp in the humid air. But your nose twitches at something else. Clove. Burnt paper. An unfamiliar mix. You find it near the spice bins, a hidden pouch tucked beneath a sack of rice. Inside, 3 things: a tiny folded scroll, a tiny clay figurine of a cobra, and a slice of dried pomegranate. You pour the scroll open. A single sentence: the Queen Mother wakes before the king. Cryptic, yes, but in this palace, that might as well be a declaration of war. You don't have time to decode all the layers, but this much is clear: someone's passing messages not just between officials and spies, but among the royal women themselves. Historians still argue whether the women of the Mughal court wielded genuine power or merely influence through proximity. But you've seen it. And it's real. You leap from the window ledge and head toward the hammam, the imperial bathhouse. There, you find steam, rose petals, and 3 royal aunties already soaking like emperors of their own secret world. They don't notice you at first. But you notice her. The emperor's stepmother. The one who's always smiling but never laughing. She's holding a delicate fan carved with verses in Persian calligraphy. And she's using it to tap out a rhythm against the marble edge of the tub. A signal. The second woman, barely older than a girl, but with eyes like dried figs, taps back using her ring against her cup. They're talking. And you're eavesdropping. Because of course you are. You slide along the edge of the pool and find a quiet spot near the towels, pretending to snooze while your ears do all the work. You're certain the letter went to Gujarat, asks the stepmother. The girl nods. Via the boy. Through the animal keeper's son. Then he's already seen it, says the third woman, wrinkled and wise and probably more dangerous than a monsoon. I say we let it burn, the girl says. Let the emperor see who remains. You blink slowly, not just aware of the conspiracy. Planning for it. This is no longer your average court intrigue. This is a dance of queens. You slink back into the corridor, paws barely making a sound on the cool stone. And now you're headed for the library. Not the animal one. The real one. where the emperor keeps his personal collection of scrolls, maps, and oddly miniature paintings of awkward hunting parties. It's heavily guarded during the day, but this early, the guards are sleepy, lazy, more interested in their sugar water and card games. You slip in through the side, yes. The mouse hole you widened 3 months ago comes in handy now, and land in a beam of dusty sunlight. And you're not alone. The young advisor is here. The one who actually reads. He's poring over a map of trade routes. A second map lies beside it, clearly forged. The rivers don't match. One city is labeled Port Saffron, which doesn't exist. You know. You've tried to steal fish from there. Nothing. He looks up, startled to see you. Again, he mutters. You hop up onto the table and push the fake map off the edge. He lets it fall. You're starting to make me feel like I work for you, he says, rubbing his temple. Well, you do get more done. He shows you the margin of the real map. A note, barely visible. Trade silence for delay. It clicks. Someone's been forging not just military records, but economic agreements. Faking promises. Creating false expectations to confuse not only enemies, but allies. You know what happens if the emperor sees this? The advisor asks. You blink. He laughs bitterly. So do I. He pockets the real map. Lights the fake one on fire. You stay long enough to bat at the ashes. Then you move. Because you sense it. The emperor is awake. And he's already angry. Not visibly, of course. He's far too elegant for that. But his pace is faster, his turban slightly askew, and his breakfast untouched. You watch from the garden wall as he storms across the colonnade toward the audience chamber. Advisors hurry after him like ants after a fallen plum. And behind him, behind all of them, walks the stepmother. Still smiling. Still silent. You follow her. She doesn't enter the chamber. She veers left. Toward the zenana. You sneak ahead and hide behind a row of jasmine pots. She meets with the girl from the bath. No words. Just a small scroll passed from hand to hand. It's over quickly. You climb the nearest pillar and find a familiar face above, the boy from the pigeon tower. Watching from the roof, legs dangling, eyes wide. I think, he whispers, they're going to let it collapse. You tilt your head. He nods. The emperor. The forgeries. The messengers. The lies. They're just letting it all burn. And see who's left after. Historians still argue whether the fall of the Mughal Empire was the result of external invasion, internal betrayal, or the slow corrosion of too many secrets. Tonight, you've witnessed a little bit of each. You curl beside the boy. He doesn't flinch. Together, you watch the smoke rise from the library chimney. You hope it's the fake map burning. But you'll never be sure. Because in this palace, truth is a shifting shadow. And cats walk between the shadows. You're exhausted, but your paws won't stop moving. It's like something ancient and whispering has slipped beneath your fur, urging you onward. And though the sun has climbed well into the sky, hot, proud, burning away the velvet of night, you remain in motion. There's one last place you haven't checked. The Imperial Astrologer's Tower. Now, you've always had a complicated relationship with the astrologer. He smells like sandalwood and goat milk. He sings off-key lullabies to himself, and once he tried to chart your birth sign, declaring you the reincarnation of a Persian war hero with poor impulse control. You weren't flattered. But he sees things others don't. Patterns in the stars, loops of fate, symbols in scattered lentils. You climb the winding steps of the tower, careful not to dislodge the ancient scrolls jammed between cracks in the wall. A monkey sits halfway up, wearing a broken earring and chewing on a chart of Venus. You exchange a look of shared confusion and keep going. At the top, you find the astrologer surrounded by spinning brass orreries, glass bottles of celestial dyes, and one oddly aggressive owl named Sharbat. He doesn't turn to face you. "You're late," he says, running a finger along a planetary dial. You blink slowly. "Too late to stop what started," he murmurs. "Too early to see how it ends." He gestures to a long silk cloth draped across the wall. A star map. But this one is unlike any you've seen. It's not the sky above Delhi. It's the court. Every advisor, every guard, every servant marked with constellations. Interconnected. Threads of ink, gold, and crimson stretching between them in ways only madmen or cats would understand. You leap to the table and study it. The emperor is a lion. Of course. The scribe. A rabbit. The queen mother. A serpent with folded wings. And you're there too. A small black cat, tail curled, orbiting the center but touching everything. The astrologer smiles without teeth. Historians still argue whether the imperial records reflect truth or merely the shadows cast by truth. You're in the shadows. You narrow your eyes. He pulls a scroll from a wooden tube and unrolls it beside the star map. A poem, written in red ink. The ink will fail, the fire will rise, the tale that Flix has seen the spies. Melodramatic, but unsettlingly accurate. He rolls it back up. "You'll want to be in the aviary at dusk," he says. You pause. No explanation. But you've learned when not to ask. You dart back down the tower, past Sharbat the owl, who tries to swipe at your tail again, and out into the courtyard. And that's when the first bell rings. Not a prayer bell. Not a meal bell. The fire bell. You run. Servants dash past you carrying buckets, spices, silk bolts, and whatever else they value most. The east wing is burning. And not just the kitchens. You arrive just in time to see the wall behind the archive collapse in a column of smoke and sparks. Dozens of scrolls flutter upward like panicked birds. And amid it all stands the scribe, holding a single scroll, burned at the edges, eyes locked on yours. You leap onto a windowsill for a better look. He mouths something. You think it's, "They knew." You're not sure who they are anymore. Maybe everyone. Maybe no one. The guards storm in. Too late, too clumsy. One slips on a patch of melted ghee. Another chokes on the smoke. The scribe vanishes into the flames like a paper ghost. You run again, this time to the imperial garden. Your safe spot. Where everything feels smaller, slower, survivable. The gardener's there. The one who always leaves milk for you in a cracked blue saucer. She's weeding the basil like nothing's happening. You meow. She doesn't look up. "You saw too much," she says softly. "Now you'll see everything." "Wait, what?" She reaches into her shawl and pulls out a slip of parchment. Sets it gently in the dirt beside you. Walks away. You nudge the parchment open with your paw. It's a list. Not names. Symbols. One for each of the palace's secret groups, the scribes, the traders, the whisperers, the courtyard cleaners who clean too thoroughly. And beside each symbol, a note. Some crossed out. Some circled. One with a paw print. Yours. Probably. You stretch, tail flicking in irritation. No one asked you to be the furry detective of imperial dysfunction. And yet, here you are, tangled in every thread, napping nowhere, paws sore, stomach rumbling. Still. You've come this far. You wait until dusk, just as the astrologer said. The palace glows orange and pink, light flickering across domes and water like dreams trying to wake. You slink through the shadows to the aviary. And inside, the boy from the pigeon tower, the girl from the hammam, the gardener, the scribe, and even the quiet advisor. A gathering. Not loud, not armed, just watchful. And on the center pedestal, a single carrier pigeon with golden bands. It's carrying the final message, the one no one has seen. You leap up beside it, tail twitching. The boy nods. You've been at every turning point. The girl smiles. And you've made it impossible for anyone to lie comfortably. The advisor chuckles. Even the emperor avoids your stare now. The scribe kneels and opens the pigeon's capsule. Inside, not a scroll, a feather. Not from the bird, from a peacock. A royal peacock. The emperor's personal seal. No words, just the seal. You all understand. It's done. The emperor knows. And this is permission. To let the pieces fall. To watch who picks them up. The boy ties the feather back on the pigeon, opens the aviary window, and lets it fly. You all watch it disappear into the dusk. And for once, no one speaks. The wind shifts. Tomorrow, the palace will wake to confusion. Accusations. Maybe violence. Maybe peace. But you'll sleep. You've earned it. And besides, there's always another night. You don't even remember padding back to your favorite alcove. One moment, you're watching the pigeon vanish into the cooling sky like a scrap of parchment caught on a breeze, and the next, you're curled into the crook between two carved pillars, where jasmine vines stretch lazy fingers over your back. The palace is holding its breath. Literally, in some cases. A few key officials are missing from the evening meal, and everyone's noticed. But no one dares to ask why. Not yet. That would be impolite. So they chew quietly, sip their lassi with forced serenity, and pretend the faint smell of smoke from the archives is just someone's overcharred paratha. But even as the palace pretends, it changes. You see it everywhere. Servants glancing twice over their shoulders. The emperor's food taster sniffing everything, even the rosewater. Two guards from opposing factions standing oddly close to one another at the marble gate, murmuring something too low for human ears to catch, but not yours. Tomorrow morning, one says. Before the prayers. You stretch, letting your claws scrape gently against the pillar. Not enough to be rude. Just enough to remind the wall who's boss. You slink down and begin your circuit once more. This time, not as a spy. As a witness. There's no one to warn now. No more whispers to track. You're not even sure if you're being followed. You might be. But at this point, who isn't? You make your way to the old audience chamber, no longer in regular use, ever since the emperor's taste shifted to the newer marble pavilion. This one has faded murals, dusty air, and the sound of pigeons flapping just above the cracked dome. Inside, the emperor, alone, sitting on the step of his own abandoned throne. No guards, no fan-bearers. Just him, a scroll in his lap, and a look on his face that says he hasn't blinked in half an hour. You step through the doorway without a sound. He hears you anyway. Of course he does. He's one of those rare humans attuned to silence. He glances down at you, gives a dry little smile, and says, "You're late." That again. You pad over, tail high, and curl at his feet. Not to serve. Not to comfort. Just to exist. You've seen the truth, haven't you? He murmurs. You blink once. It's everywhere. Not hidden in letters, or conspiracies, or traitorous merchants. He leans forward. It's in people. In the way they flinch when no one is watching. In the meals they skip. The gifts they return. The silence between sentences. He finally looks down at you. Even in cats. Historians still argue whether the emperors of the late Mughal period were shrewd manipulators, passive dreamers, or simply overwhelmed by the weight of too many centuries. You're not sure where this one falls. But he's awake now. Really awake. He sighs, rolls up the scroll, and tucks it inside his robe. Then he stands. And leaves. Not a word. Not a farewell. You remain behind, nestled in the dusky air of that quiet room, your fur gently catching the drifting dust. Then, movement. From the shadows near the door. A figure. You bristle, but only slightly. It's the stepmother. She doesn't look surprised to see you. Which, by now, is fair. She moves slowly, not like someone hiding, but someone revealing. She sits on the emperor's former seat. Crosses her legs. Stares at the mural of the tiger hunt behind you. And speaks, not to you, not really, but to the air. He thinks he's won, she says, voice like silver on silk. But this is only the prelude. You blink. She knows. Everything. Her smile is calm. There's always another storm. You step backward, pause silent on stone. Leave her to her murmurs. Back into the garden. Back past the sun-dappled lotus pool, where koi dart like secrets. Past the mango tree with the notch in its trunk from the prince's failed sword practice. Past the sundial. And then, to the wall. Where you sit. Because you're not tired. Not yet. The moon rises, slow and sure, painting the marble domes in ghostlight. And the palace. It breathes again. Slower now. Like it's waiting. You see the guards shift their routes. You see 2 pigeons return to the aviary with no message attached. You see the girl from the hammam press something into the hand of the gardener. You see the boy climb the roof one last time. And you realize. You're not watching from the outside anymore. You're part of it now. A node in the palace's dreaming brain. You yawn. Roll over. Close one eye. And keep the other half lidded, just enough to catch the subtle shift of fabric in the shadows. The empire isn't collapsing. It's molting. Shedding one version of itself for another. You've seen too much to be just a cat now. You're a chronicler. An archivist of footsteps and whispers. A walking, purring, clawed little library of truths no historian will ever fully uncover. They'll write about taxes, and sieges, and treaties. But not this. Not the way someone slipped a coin into the baker's sleeve to signal which courtyard to avoid. Not the 3-blink code between rival eunuchs. Not the Queen Mother's choice to smile instead of answer. But you'll remember. Because you were there. In every corridor. Under every table. Behind every silk curtain. And when you do finally sleep, belly full, tail twitching, whiskers twitching with dreams, it won't be because the palace is safe. It'll be because it's ready. And you've done your job. You close your eyes. And the palace turns its next page. You're dreaming. Or maybe you're not. The line blurs when you've spent this many nights hunting through lies, pacing between silken shadows, and watching humans spiral in and out of their own illusions. But now, you're somewhere warm. Somewhere scented with cardamom and old ink and the distinct tang of marble just before it rains. In your dream or in this moment, you're curled beneath the emperor's personal writing desk. A small place. Too low for most, but just right for you. The legs are carved with vines and elephants and one oddly smug-looking deer. The floor is cool against your fur. Peaceful. Outside, the palace groans into the morning. Not the usual bustle. A different kind of hum. The kind that says something has broken, but beautifully. You stretch, slow and deliberate. Your joints crack. You purr. The guards outside the emperor's chamber are standing still, like statues that used to be men. Inside, the emperor speaks in low tones with the astrologer, of all people. Their voices drift like smoke. He'll step down, won't he? The astrologer says, quietly. You perk your ears. Not step down, the emperor replies. Step aside. Let things shift. The court will never allow an outright abdication. You hear the astrologer chuckle. So you're simply inviting the future in? A pause. Then, she's ready. You blink. The emperor's daughter? Of course. You've seen her moving differently lately, watching instead of reacting, choosing instead of following. She hasn't said a word to you in days, which is its own kind of reverence. Historians still argue whether the Mughal princesses held any real power. Letters suggest they did. Paintings suggest they didn't. But you've seen power. And it doesn't always wear armor or carry scrolls. Sometimes, it wears pearls and speaks only when everyone else has run out of words. You step out from under the desk. It's time to make the rounds. Not the old kind of rounds, no more chasing messengers or decoding dusty clues. Now, it's about presence. Reassurance. The kind of silent company that lets people know they've survived something. You find the kitchen first. Still smoky. Still chaotic. But the cook grins when she sees you and throws a scrap of chicken your way. You accept. It's not your favorite, but it's warm. Familiar. Real. Then you slink through the courtyard. Past the mosaic of tiles where the pigeons used to gather. The boy is there, washing the stones. He looks up, sees you, and nods. Not a hello. More of a we did it. You move on. The throne room has changed. The emperor's seat remains, but beside it now, a new platform. Simpler. Lower. A symbol, not a statement. The princess stands nearby, speaking with the advisor and the scribe. She's not smiling. She's directing. She sees you. And for a moment, just a flicker, her mask drops. A flash of recognition. Maybe even affection. You're not sure which one of you blinks first. You leave them to it. Out into the garden. Past the koi pond, which has been cleaned, strangely. The gardener must be feeling ambitious. And then, toward the aviary. One last look. The pigeons are quieter now. Not caged, just waiting. A few of them flap toward you, wings soft and curious. You let them be. The girl from the hammam is sitting in the shade with her sleeves rolled up, repairing a broken perch. She doesn't see you. But she hums a lullaby you recognize. The one the astrologer used to sing. You curl in the shade nearby. Your final patrol, it seems, is not one of danger, but of transition. Of noticing what remains. The walls still stand. The courtyards still bloom. The marble still holds the sun in its belly. But you're no longer just a cat. Your memory, now. Living memory. The kind that doesn't get written down. The kind that curls in corners and waits to be remembered when the scrolls burn and the storytellers forget. Soon, they'll forget your name. If you ever had one. but they'll whisper of a palace cat. One who watched the night. One who saw everything. And one day, centuries from now, when some curious scholar stumbles across a half-legible letter or a folk tale tucked in a court musician's diary, they'll wonder, could it have been real? Was there truly a cat who witnessed the fall and rise of a dynasty? And someone else, somewhere far away, will smile, stretch their own sleepy pet on their lap, and say, of course. That's how all good stories begin. And end. You close your eyes again. Not to sleep, but to rest. Because for once, just once, the night doesn't need watching. Not tonight. Not anymore. You're still now. Just a breath, a whisper in the warm hush of a fading palace night. The stories have folded themselves up like tired wings, and the stars above have blinked into their final formation. All around you, the world is still moving, but softer. Slower. Like it's walking in wool. Somewhere in the garden, a fountain trickles quietly, its rhythm steady and unbothered. A fan turns lazily in the corner of a forgotten room, creaking with the wisdom of age. The last lantern flickers once, then sighs into darkness. And you've curled into the most comfortable spot you know, right between memory and dream, tail tucked, eyes half-lidded, paws twitching gently from the echo of distant footsteps. It's peaceful here. You don't need to chase anything tonight. No plots, no scrolls, no hurried rustles in the rafters. Just the soft thump of your own heartbeat and the warm breath of marble after a long, sunlit day. Let your own breath match the stillness now. Inhale slow. Exhale slower. Feel the weight of the night settle gently around your shoulders like a silk shawl. Let the walls of the palace fade. Let the moonlight melt into sleep. And remember, you were there. You saw everything. And now, at last, it's time to rest. Good night.